We're still doing an orange and teal look in 2020, so a little bit cringy.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Pacing on a sleepless night, try to catch me howling at the moon. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
What's going on, guys? For those of you that don't know me, my name is James Tseros, and I make videos consisting of tips, tricks, tutorials, and reviews that can help filmmakers grow faster. If this type of content interests you guys, maybe think about hitting the like button or subscribe. You won't regret it. I guarantee it. So I'm gonna run you guys through a very simple tutorial about how I color grade with HLG footage, and I'm gonna go probably for an orange and teal look. Very minimal orange and teal look. I'm not gonna overdo it. I'm not gonna use any LUTs, and I'm not gonna use any plugins. Whatever Final Cut Pro 10 comes with out of the box, that's what I'll be using. So the first thing we need to do is get into the right workspace. So first of all, go to Window, go to Workspaces, click on Color and Effects. That should take us to a workspace that is more suitable to color grading. So straight away, we can now see our scopes. And what we wanna do is just have one scope for this tutorial, and that's gonna be the Luma Waveform scope. Once that's been selected, go on over to your effects browser and type in HDR tools. Next, we wanna drag this HDR tool plugin onto the clips we want to color grade. So once that's been completed, we can automatically see there is a bit more highlight data that's coming back. So by going into our inspector window and going to where our plugin of HDR tools is, we then see a couple of options. And the first option is what setting or what picture profile we are converting from and to. And in this case, I will be selecting HLG. If you are using a log profile, you may need to go through a couple of them to find what suits what you are using best. But for me, HLG works fine. The next thing you want to do is maybe just a little bit take down the brightness slider, just a touch. You don't want to take out too much, just a little bit, and we can always fix this later on. So the next step is to color correct our image. So the first thing we need to do is look at our waveform. And for those of you that don't know, the waveform starts at 0 and goes all the way to 100. 0 being the darkest, the shadows of our image, and 100 being the highlights or the brightest of our image. And depending on the look you guys want to go for, you can either have all your values sitting between 0 to 100, which will give you a really high contrast image, or you can bring both of them down, maybe your highlights to 80 and your shadows to 10, and then you're gonna have more of a decontrasty look. In this case, I'm gonna go for a pretty contrasty image. So I'm gonna straight away aim for all my shadows to come down very close to the 0 line, not all the way touching, because as soon as you touch the 0 or the 100 line, you will then start seeing your image clipping and you'll lose data in whatever has been clipped. So we don't wanna do that. We wanna retain all the data we can, and that will make our image look better in the long run. So once we have our scope set up, we're gonna go over to our color inspector, select the color wheel, and we're gonna get started on changing our Luma values. So the first thing we're gonna do is bring down our shadows. So we're gonna click on the shadows color wheel, and we're gonna take down the exposure pretty much all the way to it hits 0, just a little bit above. We don't want anything clipping. Next, we're gonna take our highlights and move them up until we start seeing clipping. In this case with HLG, it's just over the 100 mark. So we're gonna take it to a point where we don't clip and we're at the highest possible mark. The next step is kind of up to you guys. I like to add a little bit of saturation. The image I'm working with at the moment, it's very highly saturated, so I don't want to overdo it with saturation, so I'll just add a touch of saturation to it. So the next thing we need to do is create our look, and our look is always going to be on a separate color wheel or a separate color board, so we can fine tune that and adjust it separately to our base grade and our base correction. So to create our look, we're going to go over to the color inspector and we're going to select a new color board. We're not going to go with a color wheel. Color board I think is much easier to work with when working with the look. So if we go into the color board and we can see color exposure and saturation, we're going to select color, because that's what our primary goal is here, is to make a look that is going to add or change the colors in our clips. So as you can see, we can see a couple of dots now. We can see our shadows, midtones, highlights, and a master. Each of these will be adjusted to get the certain look that you desire. So I already said I'm going to create an orange and teal look, and I don't want it to be that heavy of an orange and teal look. I just want it to be a little bit subtle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with taking my shadows and moving that into the teal area until I get the kind of color that I want. You don't want it to be too green, you don't want it to be too blue, you want a sort of middle ground in there. So after we've done this, I'm then gonna take my midtones and move it into the orange area. And just keep in mind, the higher you go on the color board, the more saturated that color will be. So once we've done this, you can automatically see our image is looking very green. So now we need to go and take our master point and we need to pull that down on the green to subtract green from the image. Once you start doing this, you will see straight away a point where you'll be happy with how the image will look, and that's where you should stop. And you can still see the teal in the shadows, but as a whole picture, you don't see this green cast over at all. Next thing you want to do is go on over to your highlights, put that in the pink or the magenta area, and take that down also. As you guys can see, if you're working with something that's very bright or like a skin tone, you may see a reddish pink tint to a person's face. This is where we take that out. So go to your highlights, pull them back enough till you see that pink disappear. So as you guys can see, the look is coming together. Yes, it does take a little bit of fine tuning to get it perfect, but once it's done, go on over to your exposure in your color board. And what we want to do is, once again, we have a shadows and midtones and a highlight. We want to take the shadows and just boost them slightly. And as you boost it, you'll see your image will start getting this little bit of a fade to the shadows, and it just makes it look that little bit more cinematic. This is personal preference. If you want to do this, by all means go for it. If you don't, whatever you guys want. But I do like the fade sometimes because I feel like it just blends your image together nicely, and it just makes it look that little bit more cinematic. So the next thing we're gonna do is get the viewer's eyes to focus on a single point of your image. And that is very important. And that's the whole point of a good colorist, is to drag people's eyes to what the cinematographer wants to show off, or what they want to be the main focal point of their footage. So the main way of achieving this is by using vignettes, but I do not like using the vignette preset that's in Final Cut Pro. Instead, I go and I create masks and then take the exposure down that way. I find it a little bit more controllable and maneuverable, and you can get better results. So how we go about this is pretty simple. What we need to do is go and create a new color wheel. Once we create a new color wheel, we then click at the top and there's a little button that says masks. We select that and we click add shape mask, not color mask, shape mask. Very important. Once we have selected the shape mask, we need to go down and you can see a setting that says inside and outside. We want to select the outside of the mask, so click on that. What we then do is adjust the mask to a focal point that we are happy with, something that is in our footage. You know, maybe you have that hero shot and you have a person standing there, or, you know, a great view like I have here. And what you want to do is you want to just drag that out and soften it as much as you can. And what that does is, by feathering it out, it just looks much more natural than just throwing on a vignette and calling it a day. So after you guys have softened it out enough and you've placed it in a position that you're happy with, go back to the color wheel and move your master slider's exposure down. You don't want to go too much, you don't want to go too crazy, because once you start going a little bit wild with it, it starts looking unnatural. You still want it to look natural, you just want enough of a difference that can really drag someone's eye to a brighter point of the image. Now, once this is done, we can also go and we can select inside the mask, and we can also boost the exposure on the inside of the mask just to really make our subject pop. Now, the final touch is a letterbox, and this is up to you guys if you want to do this or not. For some footage it works well, for others it may be a little bit cringy. So in this case, I decided to use it and be a little bit cringy. Nothing wrong with that. From time to time, we're still doing an orange and teal look in 2020, so a little bit cringy. So go to your effects preset, type in letterbox, drag it onto your clip, find the letterbox setting that suits what you want to do best, and there you go. So straight away, we have created a look from scratch with HLG footage. Now I'm gonna go and do the next clip and the next clip, and they are pretty much gonna be identical. So just keep in mind, because every single clip I've showed you is different from the last, every single grade needs to be just that little bit different to fit what the clip is throwing out at me. So you don't want just the same grade for every single clip. If you have a few clips that are the same colors, exposure, lighting, all those things, you may be able to get away with just using the same grade. So maybe save it as a preset and use it for every single one. If it's very different between each clip, you will need to go in manually and make adjustments. So I hope this tutorial helped you guys grading with HLG. I know for some people, moving to HLG or a log picture profile may be a little bit daunting, but I hope this really helped you guys understand it's not really that hard to create a good image. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed these, please give the video a like. Think about subscribing, you won't regret it. There's plenty more content to come, and until next time guys, see you guys in the next one.